Welcome to New World Order. Sergei Skripal has been released from hospital, the victim of the Salisbury poisoning. Salisbury poisoning to me always sounds a bit like a guest deal. Not even dead! He's not even dead. There are people coming back from a week in Faliraki who feel worse than this guy. Now, we don't know what happened. What do we know about international espionage? But the Russians floated their idea. They said maybe Britain did this themselves to distract from Brexit. I don't know about you, but an old guy not quite dying on a park bench, that's got British workmanship written all over it. If Britain are trying to distract from Brexit, things are going really well. MI5 must be sitting there going, well, this is brilliant. We've got the World Cup after this, then it's Wimbledon fortnight. Prince Philip won't have to die till the autumn. Then it's Aunt McPartland's murder-suicide taking us all the way to the finish line. Poor old Aunt, poor old Aunt. There is a silver lining. We now know which one is Aunt. Yeah, see that one that isn't wrapped around a lamppost? That's Dick. So what was Russia's punishment for all this? Russia's punishment is that no members of the royal family will go to the World Cup in Russia, a country whose views on royal families is at best ambivalent. We had the royal wedding, the pastor went on a bit. They must have wished that it was just back in the day when they could just execute someone like that. But they haven't been able to do anything like that for over 20 years now. The death toll rose from the protests in Gaza. Over 100 people have been shot dead. Thousands more have been shot and wounded. But to be fair, there were injuries on both sides. One of the Israeli snipers got an erection for so long that his foot went to sleep. Things are bad in Gaza. Things are so bad in Gaza that porn stars have started referring to their pubic arrangement as a Gaza Strip. An area that's been so brutally pummeled that no child could ever hope to crawl out alive. So why is it important to talk about this? It's important to talk about this in Britain because Britain still provides moral and practical support to Israel while Israel breaks international law. And I don't think, thank you, I don't think British people would be okay with that if they knew the full facts of the case, if they knew the full extent of Britain's hypocrisy on the world stage. Britain sells weapons to Saudi Arabia that Saudi Arabia uses to kill people in Yemen. Yet Britain is the #2 provider of aid to Yemen. And why not? Life gives you Yemen, you give Yemen aid. Britain needs to understand its own history. Theresa May this week told the Irish Prime Minister to cheer up about the prospect of a hard border. Does she know what Britain did in Ireland? To me, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland are like two halves of one bipolar personality. Yes, get the jolly old fiddle out and stick it through some fucker's head. One of their proposed solutions is that instead of having a hard border, what they're going to do is have a customs check, pull lorries over on the border. That's going to be an interesting job. Pulling over lorries on the border in Armagh. Bit of danger money involved there. That'll be the best paid customs and excise job in the history of the world. People will be retiring from Premiership football to do that job. Look out, I think we're being pulled over by Raheem Sterling. Joining me tonight to discuss this week's big topics are Sarah Pascoe, Catherine Ryan and data journalist Mona Chalabi.
about a good week, but a statistic caught my eye that humans represent 0.01% of all living things, and yet we have managed to destroy 83% of all wild mammals.
Get in.
I know.
In your face, Sharks.
Do you think we could kill more next year?
Why not? Why not? We've only got through 50% of all plants, so there's loads more to destroy, yeah.
Vegans are doing their best.
Didn't you tell me that a carrot can scream?
I didn't tell you that.
I think you really told me that if you boil a carrot, it screams.
I didn't tell you that.
So, first up, Britain is entering a golden age of racism. There's this idea that lots of people who voted for Brexit are stupid. They're not stupid. They're just people who want to put an end to immigration from Europe because they don't like Pakistanis. Nobody admits to being racist anymore. People used to be proud of it in the 80s. Now everyone's like, nah, it's not racist. It's just a Union Jack tablecloth for a street party to which we forgot to invite the Patels. Amber Rudd had to resign after the Windrush scandal. Personally, I don't think that she should have resigned. I think she should have been deported. Joining us to discuss all this, please welcome rapper, poet and author Akala. How you doing, man?
Yeah, it feels like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, we did an interview last week.
We did. I meant last time I came on your show.
All right.
It's so good, but we did it. It was good fun.
So, what do you make of the whole Windrush scandal?
It's not a hugely new issue for migrants from the Caribbean. So it's really fascinating, but I think it does give us an opportunity to look at historical context of how Windrush was received at the time. Like when the actual boat came, the government at the time, which was Attlee's government, called the literal passengers on the Windrush an incursion and said that, you know, steps needed to be taken to identify the ringleaders so that no further incursions were encouraged. These were British citizens, paid for themselves, in many cases war veterans.
I found it amazing like how little British people knew about the history of the thing. So they didn't fully appreciate that these people came as British citizens, many of them expecting a kind of hero's welcome. Some people were war heroes and they're coming to be welcomed by the homeland, and they receive this.
It's hard to overstate the degree to which our grandparents genuinely believe themselves to be British. If you've been to any kind of Windrush generation home, you'll see Queen Elizabeth and White Jesus. Those are the two kind of people on the wall. Yeah. That's not a stereotype. And so they really believed they were coming to the mother country, and that they had no... Remember, what's missed in a lot of this is Caribbean societies are multi-ethnic, multicultural societies. So they expected to be treated as citizens as they saw themselves, but they were not. And sort of the legacies of that are very much still alive and made this possible, but not inevitable. And the public's reaction is interesting and revealing at the same time. I think that the state that very much underestimated the kind of level of reaction there would be against it. But I do, at the same time, think there is a sort of good immigrant, bad immigrant thing going on, where we've got the points this week, but, you know, it'll be...
Absolutely. I mean, people saying, of course, we all want to crack down on illegal migrants. And you're like, do we? Well, I've no empathy for people because they don't have the paperwork. I mean, is that who we want to be?
I think it's quite interesting that actually in polling it shows that more people blame May for this than Amber Rudd. So about a third of the people polled, because she was Home Secretary at the time, right? So ultimately I think a lot of people feel that the buck has to stop with her.
I think this is one of the great contradictions of Britain as a society, is that you have, ironically, a society that is one of the probably the most successful multi-ethnic polities in the world. You walk down any major city in Britain, no one's going to blink at really anymore at seeing people that quote-unquote look different. So you have real big successes and then massive state institutional failures. And I think, again, in this particular instance, the state misread the temperature of the public. If this had been the Somali community or the Congolese community or the Nigerian community, they haven't become the model minority in the way that, say, British Indians have been for a while now. But I'm old enough to remember, I grew up in the 90s, so I grew up in the period where British Indians were not the model minority. It was, we like you, Caribbeans, you're all right, it's just them lot we don't like.
There was a sense of these people have earned the right to
be
call
British.
themselves British.
They've put up with everything and they've gone through it all.
Part of the reason why I think the public reacted differently is just a question of age, right? There was evidence that these people had contributed to society, whereas with immigrants that are here now, it's still hypothetical. It's hypothetical of, oh, maybe you will just claim benefits or whatever, but we haven't learned from history to see just how much immigrants have continuously contributed.
But I never had any problem as an immigrant. When I wear a tracksuit and listen to drill music, people assume I'm from Chatham. I'm so privileged. I've never faced any of it, and I'm just as much a Commonwealth immigrant.
But it is, for some Eastern European countries, there's white people who also do experience a kind of racism. It isn't as simple as just being white.
They're the other white, they're the Irish of
Yes.
now. So
Yeah.
when I grew up, it was the Irish. They were the whites who were not quite white. The Irish and the Caribbean community were very, very close for exactly that reason. It will be the Romanians or the Polish now who are sort of the unwelcome European group.
So, the Windrush scandal saw the Windrush generation being denied healthcare benefits and being threatened with deportation despite being British citizens. The government must have been aware that what they were doing would have very serious implications. Here's how someone from the normally very guarded British civil service described the minister's concerns.
Is your recollection that this was a kind of controversial policy? People saying this is a really challenging policy, Home Secretary.
I think it was not just a question of the Home Secretary being told it was a challenging policy. The Prime Minister was as well, and this was a very contested piece of legislation across government departments. Now, I can't say, and shouldn't say, as the former head of the Civil Service, precisely who gave what advice to whom, but what I can tell you, it was highly contested. And there were some who saw it, I shan't name them, as almost reminiscent of Nazi Germany and the way it's working.
It's like, those are the most guarded people. And he's come out and said, look, people knew that was wrong. I honestly think, like, the political class were projecting their own racism onto the public, and didn't realise that their racism is bigger than the public's.
Of course. You know, the contempt that British ruling classes and European ruling classes had for their own peasantry was the contempt that was exported to the colonies and that have sort of returned. So it's very much the racism of the ruling class is much more important, much more powerful, and is the driving force. If they wanted to delegitimize these things, it would be very, very easy to do so. If they wanted to teach children in schools, for example, the history of the British Empire, people said, actually, this amount of wealth is what was extracted from India. More Indians fought in World War II than New Zealand, Canada, and Australia combined. This is how much wealth has been extracted from the Caribbean. These people are legally British citizens, etc., etc., etc. The whole history and sense of British citizenship might have been very, very different. But that isn't what was done. It was sort of left to neglect, and then the state said, oh, look, ignorant, racist guy down the pub, it's his fault. That's why we've got to change immigration legislation. We don't care what he thinks about anything else, and we ignore him on every other subject, but on this one, we're going to listen to him.
Absolutely.